Happy Halloween, everyone. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day today, and I hope everyone has a wonderful night tonight. I hope everyone gets, all the candy in the world. But anyways, guys, my name is Andrew Heishman. I'm the lead forecaster here at NWW116. So in today's video, we have a lot to cover here. Let's actually go back to the tropics. We do have a new named storm here in the Atlantic Ocean, which we'll get to here in a moment. Like I said, we have a lot to cover today, so we'll go ahead and try to go through this as fast as possible. We'll take a look at the tropics with the new named storm. We'll move to the Storm Prediction Center to see the threat for thunderstorms across the next 3 days. We'll take a look at the mesoscale analysis in terms of the areas of low and high pressure that are impacting basically the bits of the country. We'll take a look at the forecast models in terms of GFS as well as NAM. We do have a potential winter weather event going on for the bits of the Central Great Plains, so stay tuned for that. We'll take a look at the space weather side of things. We do have a geomagnetic storm impacting bits of the world, which could lead to some auroras tonight. This actually started hitting us yesterday, in which there's actually a threat to, it's still impacting the world as we speak, in which we could see auroras in some bits of the world later on tonight on Halloween, so stay tuned for that. We'll take a look at the overall cloud cover, the overall picture across the nation in terms of, clouds and areas of sunshine. We'll go ahead and see what areas are relatively looking nice and what areas are looking relatively overcast. We'll move on to the climate side of things. We don't really do this, but we'll take a look at these days 6 through 10 temperature anomalies. We'll take a look at the days 6 through 10 precipitation anomalies as well. Look and see what areas are expected to see lower precip, and basically lower and higher precip and lower and higher temperatures. So then at the end of the video, we take a look at the National Weather Service hazards, so basically our warnings, watches, and advisories. So yeah, that was a lot. But anyways, let's go ahead and get on into it. So, like I said, we do have quite a bit to go over. So, we do have a new subtropical cyclone here, basically in the central parts of the North Atlantic. This was that area of low pressure we've been seeing drift eastward, basically across the northeast. This was that system that impacted the Mid-Atlantic with all that wind a couple days back, as well as all that flooding, a lot of that swelling and stuff, higher seas, that was impacting the northeast. This has generally moved relatively far eastward and is now a subtropical cyclone, which means it is a new named storm in the Atlantic 2021 hurricane season. So, maximum sustained winds of 50 miles per hour. Of course, this does lead to higher gusts, maybe up to 15 miles per hour higher. So, we'll talk about, 65 mile per hour wind gusts, maybe even higher. Who knows? Minimum central pressure, 987 millibars, so that is dropping, moving east at 8 miles per hour. So, in terms of what this system is expected to do, it's generally going to be avoiding all areas of land. It's going to be, taking a southern, it's kind of stalling out at this point, but it's going to be taking a southern track, eventually shooting up to the northeast, moving up north, and then moving off to the northeast as it gets caught in the jet stream. But generally, this thing is going to be staying away from all areas of land, in which, threats of the system is literally near none. I don't expect anything out of Wanda. So, we do have that disturbance here, basically, under the Cape Verde Islands here. Overall formation through 5 days is relatively low at a 30%. It's the same as yesterday. Formation through 48 hours is also a low 30%. Pretty much a 70% chance of this thing not forming. So I don't really expect much in terms of that. We move on to the Eastern Pacific and the Central Pacific. I don't really expect much. Nothing's really going on there. So we have all of our eyes here on the Atlantic between Wanda and this disturbance we've been paying attention to. So, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look here at the Storm Prediction Center. Days 1 through 3. Now we do have a TSTM risk basically across the upper elevations of the Rockies. Basically just showing that generalized thunderstorms are expected, not necessarily meeting severe criteria. I have seen TSTM risk where you've had, a severe thunderstorm warning or two issued inside of them, but generally these risks just show that, there's just generalized thunderstorms expected, not necessarily, overall, widespread severe weather expected. So just generalized thunderstorms for bits of, Idaho moving into northern Utah and bits of, southwestern Wyoming here in this, for today. So, we move on to day 2. We do have an even smaller TSTM risk, basically across pretty much northwestern Colorado. We do have another one here for basically the second half of Michigan on the northern front, basically the northeastern side of Michigan. Pretty much just showing that, generalized thunderstorms are expected. So, day 3, we do have a larger TSTM risk, basically stretching across eastern New Mexico, moving into central and northern Texas, as well as bits of southern Oklahoma here, showing that, generalized thunderstorm risk for day 3, which would be on, so today's Sunday, so that'll be day 1, day 2 will be Monday, day 3 will be Tuesday. So this would be for Tuesday. So that's what we're dealing with in terms of that. So let's go and take a look here at the mesoscale analysis. Now we do have high pressure building in across the upper northwest here, leading to some pretty nice conditions. Further we track to the east, we do have an area of low pressure that's impacting bits of the northern states, including New Hampshire and Maine. They're actually under a pretty decent flood warning, which we'll get to in the end of the video. But that's basically what we're dealing with in terms of that. So let's go and take a look here at the GFS model. Now we see that area of high pressure that's starting to build into the region with that area of low pressure across the northeast. So before we look at GFS, I want to take a look here at NAM12K, pretty much a high resolution model, but this doesn't go out as far. So we do have the threat for winter weather across bits of the northern Great Plains, but moving into the central Great Plains, especially near like the Nebraska. That's kind of where the biggest threat for winter weather is. So further we kind of move into the moving into the day here. This is now November 1st at around 3 a.m. We do have that winter weather starting to kick in, across basically bits of western and central Nebraska, and pretty much Wyoming here in eastern parts of the state. Also a little bit going on here basically in northeastern Colorado here. So we still have that area of high pressure basically across Montana, and then that low pressure that we see currently over pretty much Maine at this point will start to lift north and move out of the area. So kind of like all the rain is starting to move out of the area, but there is still flooding. Flooding is still a concern, which we'll get into more here in a moment. So this system will generally impact, kind of move into bits of the the central Great Plains here, tracking to the east, and then building in high pressure pretty much across the bits of the central country here, right on the Midwest here. Relatively high pressure, which can lead to some pretty good conditions in terms of weather. So that's basically what we're dealing with in terms of NAM12K. Let's go ahead and take we'll take a look at GFS here. We'll take a look not at the latest model. The latest hasn't really finished yet. So we'll take a look at the model before. So same thing, the high pressure here, the area of low pressure across the northeast. This is generally going to be moving away. The high pressure is going to building into bits of the central country. And then it does look like we might get maybe a little area of low pressure here to form off of the Texas coast, moving into the southeast, which could bring the next chance for rainfall. According to this model, pretty much across bits of the southern bits of the country, including Florida as well as Georgia here. This isn't exactly. This is just one model. I want to point that out. This is just one model, one run as well. So you can't really take this 100% seriously, but that's a general idea of what is expected. And of course, we do have that area of high pressure generally moving to the east, now over the mid-Atlantic region, leading to some pretty good conditions in terms of that. So that high pressure will persist, moving pretty much across the northeast here, kind of lingering in through the next several days. And then that's basically what we're dealing with in terms of that. I don't really like to go too far out in the GFS model, because the further you go out, the more inaccurate it gets. So let's go and take a look here at these temperatures. We're taking a look at that significant cool down that was expected bits across the country for the last few days now. We are already seeing temperatures well in the freezing across Montana and everything like that. So this thing will generally start to creep its way mostly south here. We can actually see this is for November 3rd. This is only 3 days out for 8 o'clock a.m., which is the coolest time of the day. We can see those freezing temperature lines, stretching all the way down into bits of, it looks like bits of Virginia here, moving into bits of, the western, pretty much the Blue Ridge Mountains, moving into the freezing temperature zone, across the northeast and into the Ohio Valley, and eventually into the bits of the upper Midwest and into the northern Great Plains, in which we're going to see those freezing temperatures there. However, the further we go down the line, this area of, cooler temperatures, will likely start to push a little bit further, further down, maybe, as far as, bits of, Tennessee as well. But that's basically what we're dealing with in terms of that. Now, GFS really does go crazy here towards the end. Look at this. Look at that. Now, this, like I said, this is really far out, okay? GFS has actually been saying this for the last, few models or so. But this is relatively far out. You can't take this 100% seriously. It's just something to watch. But GFS is showing, for the last few models, a relatively strong cool down. Look at this freezing mark reaching as low as Florida. Bits of the panhandle of Florida, moving into coastal Mississippi as well as coastal Alabama. Like I said, this isn't certain. This will likely change, okay? But it's just really kind of crazy to see what GFS is showing. Mid-Atlantic, Northeast, well in the freezing. Across the upper Midwest, we're talking a big Arctic blast. A lot of cold temperatures from that that polar air mass that's moving through the Canadian area, and basically moving to the southeast. But yeah, overall, it's kind of crazy. But like I said, you can't take that 100% seriously. But that cool down is kind of expected, to occur for bits of the northern half of the country. Basically stretching into the mid-Atlantic to the northeast. Bits of the Ohio Valley moving into the upper northwest. the upper Midwest, moving into the basically the northern Great Plains here with that freezing temperatures. So, but we'll keep an eye on that over the next few days. So, all right, so let's go and take a look here at the space weather side of things. We're going to see what is going on in terms of that. So we do have a geomagnetic storm watch still in effect for today. This did include yesterday as well. We do have a G3, which is basically like, kind of like the category 3. You have hurricanes that reach from 1 to 5, 5 being the worst, 1 being the kind of mildest. We're kind of right in the middle here at a G3, which is kind of like that category 3 with hurricanes. So I was taking a look here at the Aurora forecast. I was getting ready to, start talking about this, but then I realized this is actually kind of old data. This is not, updated. This is actually from yesterday. Going on right here. This was last night moving into the region. So I can't really say much right now, but if you guys would like to know more on this, I would recommend following our Twitter, which will give, the latest updates on the Aurora in terms of the forecast and stuff and the current conditions. I was going to go over it today, but, there's just really, there's really nothing going on. The latest forecast, is kind of old. This is old data, so I'm really sorry about that, but if you guys do want to follow up on the latest on the Aurora, I recommend, following our Twitter, in which we will, post more updates on that later on today. All right, so let's go and take a look here at the cloud cover across bits of the nation. We'll try to make this quick because we do have a few things we do need to talk about still. Moving into the northeast, we do have, immense amount of cloud cover, but pretty much from, New Jersey to Massachusetts, we might have some breaks in clouds here. This is associated with that area of low pressure that is moving pretty much north, as we saw earlier in the video. We move into the mid-Atlantic region, pretty much just east of the Blue Ridge. It's relatively clear. Moving down into the southeast, including, pretty much South Carolina and North Carolina, relatively clear for the most part. We do have some clouds building on the western side of North Carolina. Moving down into the southeast, we do have some cloud cover across Florida, moving into pretty much central and western Georgia and bits of northeastern Alabama. But pretty much, across the rest of the southeast, it's relatively clear, from pretty much Louisiana moving into Arkansas, Mississippi, and bits of, central and western Alabama. Relatively clear. We move into the southern Great Plains, across Texas. Relatively clear for the most part. However, we do move into the panhandle of Texas. We do have some cloud cover moving on. We do move into basically move into the Ohio Valley here. We do have some cloud cover basically across the eastern portions of the Ohio Valley, with a little bit of clearing pretty much going across, Indiana, moving into eastern Illinois here. Now, these clouds are probably going to be moving eastward, covering this area later on tonight. So we move into basically bits of the Midwest, across northern Missouri and southern Missouri, relatively clear. We do have that kind of band of clouds, moving through St. Louis, so they're probably in overcast conditions at this point. We do move into the northern Great Plains, relatively clear here, basically across Minnesota, moving into North and South Dakota. Now we do have some cloud cover basically across bits of the central Great Plains. This is associated with that winter system we are expecting later on tonight. So then we move into basically bits of the southern Great Plains, which we already talked about, relatively clear here across that area. We move into the southwest. We do have some, mostly clear skies across the area. We do have some patchy clouds, across central and western, pretty much New Mexico, moving into eastern Arizona. And then, of course, we do move, pretty much to, the central, pretty much central western parts of the country, relatively, overcast with those, that winter system that's going to be moving through. Then we move into the the upper northwest. We do relatively have, kind of a mixed, situation going on here between clouds and clear conditions. With that high pressure that is building in across the region. So that's what we're dealing with in terms of the cloud cover. So, all right, so let's go and take a look at the days 6 through 10 temperature outlook. So, yeah, kind of a lot going on here. We move into basically the eastern parts of the country. We do have that significant cool down we've been talking about, in which the Climate Prediction Center has put a below average risk across the eastern side of the country. Now, the further we do move west, we do have that above average temperatures expected across the region, with the near normal kind of pushing into pretty much western Texas into basically the upper Midwest here. But that's with the near normal conditions. Now we are expecting, of course, the higher probability of above, temperatures. The more, darker the shade gets between the red and the blue. Basically, we have, the greatest amount of confidence of, below average temperatures basically across here, across the southeast, which is definitely expected. And then we move into basically bits of the western states, which, like we said, is relatively above average in terms of, temperatures that are usually on a normal, this is basically, anomalies, basically showing, what is usually occurring at this time, but this is relatively above normal than average. This is relatively below average than normal. So we move into the precipitation outlook. Now, for much of the country, we're relatively below average in terms of precipitation. We move into the upper northwest. We do have, a relatively, large area of above average. This is due to all that moisture that's been going into basically the upper northwest. We move into the eastern side of the states. It's relatively near normal for the most part, but we do have a shade of above normal, basically across central and southern Florida, moving into basically the mid-Atlantic into the northeast. So, all right, so let's go and take a look at the National Weather Service hazards here. Basically warnings, watches, and advisories. Now, before we get into this, I want to go ahead and mention that the high wind warning, the wind advisory, and the winter storm warning is nowhere to be found here on this map. My theory is that is actually in Alaska, but unfortunately there is no way to view Alaska. Now, if we do go up here, we do see Alaska, but there is no button to click on it. So my theory is that those warnings and advisories are inside of that region. But let's go ahead and start off with the winter side of things. We do have a winter weather advisory in effect, basically across bits of eastern Wyoming, moving into the southeastern parts of the state. We do have also winter weather advisories, including bits of western and bits of basically south central Nebraska here as well. So basically, winter weather advisories mean that winter conditions are expected. However, they don't meet the criteria to become a winter storm warning or a winter storm watch. But generally, we are expecting some winter weather. We did see back on the NAM model, basically showing that that bit of snow that's going to be patching through the region here through the overnight hours. So basically, we can expect maybe a few inches of snow. In which some instances of travel can be hazardous, with slippery roadways and stuff. But we do have freeze warnings in effect, basically across bits of northern Illinois here, basically saying that freezing conditions are expected, meaning that the temperatures will get to 32 and below. Then we do have, move on to the flooding side of things. We do have a lot of flooding going on, basically across bits of central Illinois, moving to western bits of Indiana, northwestern Ohio, southern bits of basically Michigan here, moving into basically bits of western New York, and a lot of flooding going on, basically across New Hampshire, and especially, the coastal areas of Maine, in which we saw that area of low pressure that's, driving all that rain across the area. So, all right, so that's going to wrap it up for today's video. If you guys did enjoy, make sure you leave a thumbs up. It'd be greatly appreciated. If you guys have any comments, make sure to leave them down below. We'll make sure to get to them. But anyways, guys, I hope you all have a wonderful Halloween, and I will see you guys in the next update.